brain, you're in the nerds domain. Come on in, it's about to begin.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Nerds Domain Podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about the movie Legend to fulfill one of our reward levels for our Kickstarter from last year. This one goes out to Daniel Ritchie from When Nerds Collide, and tonight they're actually recording their 100th episode extravaganza at Tijuana Flats in Virginia somewhere. So thanks, Daniel, and thanks for supporting us, and congratulations on your 100th episode.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So I'm here with Shirley.
Hello.
John.
Hi.
And Jesse.
Hi.
And we watched the movie Legend. Did you guys?
When did it come out?
1986. I'll read it.
Actually, it came out in 1985 in England.
According to IMDb, the release date was April 18th, 1986, here in America.
Yeah.
The only country that matters
See,
for our
Wikipedia,
podcast.
the place that can't lie, states.
What? You need to stay off the internet.
All right, I'm going to read a quick synopsis, talk about who was starring, directing, and all that, and then we'll get into more ridiculous things that Jesse says. A young man must stop the Lord of Darkness from both destroying daylight and marrying the woman he loves. Directed by Ridley Scott. The writer is William Hjortsberg. Starring Tom Cruise, Mia Sara, Tim Curry, and with a small appearance from the Doctor from Voyager.
Robert Picardo.
Yep.
Appearance is sort of a loose term.
Are you finished?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I think one of the first things that we should do is rewrite that synopsis. So, Johnny, what would your synopsis have been?
Yeah.
I don't know. That was pretty close.
What?
I don't think he knows that she's going to get married until, like, right at the end.
Nobody knows that she's going to get married. It's only between her and Darkness.
Darkness does.
Well yeah, Darkness has the hots for her the whole time.
Yeah, but, okay, so your problem is that Tom Cruise doesn't realize he's saving Princess Lily from being married to the Darkness. So,
yeah.
But
to Darkness, it's not the Darkness. It's just Darkness.
Whatever, to Darkness, yes, semantics. But but my point is that the statement Matt read remains true, that if he doesn't save her, she will be married to Darkness. Right?
I do find that synopsis awful short. Like, it just doesn't...
It's lacking in some way.
I don't know. Something about a unicorn horn should be in there.
Yeah.
Well, yes, that's
saving the world.
Yeah, I feel like it is lacking a little bit.
Lackluster. Yeah. Anyway, okay.
And what do you think, Jesse? Because you stayed awful silent in this Darkness argument.
I agree.
Agree with what?
Unicorns should have a larger part in it. I mean, this had more to do with unicorns than the last Unicorn kind of did. I mean, it's...
Wow, I don't think I've seen the last Unicorn.
Oh, you need to. It's a better movie.
What were you saying, Johnny?
I haven't seen the last Unicorn in over a decade, so I don't remember it very well.
Right on.
I didn't even know there was a movie, The Last Unicorn.
Oh, okay. Well, you guys need to watch it.
I knew there was a movie, I just didn't know what it was. This has one of my favorite, what is the appropriate PC term for those of us that are shorter than others?
There's a dwarf and,
But is dwarf I don't want to be insensitive.
No,
dwarf.
Dwarf.
Okay.
There's dwarf, and then there's the, the show is called Little People, but I don't think that's what what the PC term is for it.
Well, it has my favorite, one of my favorite dwarves in it, Billy Barty.
Yeah. Because dwarf is like Lord Tyrion, because I can't remember his name.
Peter Dinklage.
And
Peter Dinklage, and then Little People is like Balder.
Balder.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Honeythorpe was an elf, right? Honeythorn?
Honeythorn Gump was a 16-year-old boy.
But he was an elf.
Yes,
we don't know.
He had 20 years.
We're talking about real terms.
He was the Gump.
Not fantastical.
In all fairness, they were not well defined, I don't think, other than they were some sort of fae.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just like, yeah.
I think the distinction was just a broad stroke goblin, imp, whatever, is the bad guys. Fairy, fae, elf was all the good guys. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So Billy Barty plays my favorite character in Master of the Universe, Gwildor, who is phenomenally terrible but great all at the same time, and does not fit the Masters of the Universe storyline at all.
It's because he's a dwarf.
But still great. No, it has nothing to do with him being a dwarf. It's just the character doesn't make any sense in the setting. But Gwildor is still fantastic, and him eating a bucket of chicken is hilarious.
That's actually something I wanted to bring up, and since we're on the subject,
Masters of the Universe is something you wanted to bring up.
Yes, because which character in Legend did Billy Barty play?
He was Screwball.
So he was not the character that had the wine underneath his hat.
No, that was
Brown Tom.
Herbert, I think.
Okay.
So.
Brown Tom.
No, I'm talking about the actor.
Okay.
No,
the
his
actor.
name is Cork.
I don't know.
So anyway, Brown Tom had wine under his hat. Isn't that the same makeup that they used in Masters of the Universe?
It's similar, but I don't know if it's exactly the same.
To me, it was like dead ringer. I was like, wait, I thought that was from the He-Man movie, and here he is in Legend. That was weird. Threw me off. I was,
Isn't that around the same time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think Masters of the Universe is 2 or 3 years after this.
Yeah.
But this also was a 3-year production. Like, they took time to film this. There were some problems during production. I did
Legend?
research. Yeah, the whole forest scene burned down.
What?
When a 007 movie set caught fire. Yeah, there was a whole... It took them 3 years to successfully film this movie. Yeah. When they started, Sara was only 15. When they ended, she was 18.
Wow.
So, it's this weird, she got older, which you can't really tell. They did a really good job.
Yeah, I know.
But, that's a long, long, long film time.
Well, it makes sense, because you see her in this, in real life, you saw her in Legend, and then the next year she's in high school dating Ferris Bueller, so it's...
That is true.
She looked very young in this movie, and so the 3-year gap makes it make more sense as to why she was able to make that jump like that.
Yeah. Okay, so who wants to give us a full explanation of the film in a somewhat short manner?
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
A full explanation is this is basically light versus evil. A curious young girl starts a chain of events that ends up almost condemning the world to eternal darkness, and in the end, she corrects it.
She corrects it?
Yeah. Well, her team. With the help of her team.
I mean, not that she didn't help correct it.
Huh?
But not that she didn't help correct it, but there was some more than just her. All right, so I think you skipped over what I would feel are some important parts, but
Go ahead.
I think that's okay. So the unicorns. There are the unicorns in this. There are 2 of them.
A male and a female.
A male and a female, and they are what protect the innocent from being harmed by evil.
Yes.
And then there's Darkness, which is a demon-y looking guy played by Tim Curry, and I think he's fantastic in this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think, honestly, he's my favorite part of the whole thing. Other than Billy Barty, because, Gwildor. But yeah, I really do. There's a lot that happens in the movie. Jesse, you saw the theatrical version.
Yeah.
Runs about an hour and a half. Shirley and I and Johnny all saw the director's cut. Although Shirley and I then went back and watched from the moment that
Darkness's speech started,
what's Tom Cruise's character's name? I should probably
Jack.
keep this up. From the moment that Jack shows up and gets ready to shoot the arrow.
Oh, yeah.
From that point on, we watched the theatrical version as well.
Oh,
because that's about...
Well, it was a little bit before that. It's where he starts his speech right as... during the sacrifice ritual.
Yeah.
Is that different?
No, it's there's not a ton of difference. There are a lot of things cut out.
It's just some some random lines that are cut out.
There's some random lines, some scenes. The part where Darkness is holding on and trying not to get pushed out into the oblivion. He actually slides back a lot more in the theatrical version than he does in the director's cut. Literally in the director's cut, he stops. And that's the last of it.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't slide back, but in the theatrical version, he keeps sliding back a little bit at a time.
Yeah, and then there's 2 strokes from Tom Hanks, like cutting each hand off.
Not Tom Hanks. Tom Cruise.
Or Tom Cruise, sorry.
This would be a different movie with Tom Hanks.
That would have been kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and then there is a huge difference in the end.
What? Like,
So,
what?
Yeah, what happens in your guys'?
So,
I honestly thought it's okay to talk about the ending in this, right? We're going to spoil everything.
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, it's
when
so
he's
old.
doing his whole dive into the river, the lake to get the ring back.
Right.
I thought he was going to dive into the river and come back up as the unicorn. I don't know.
What?
It just kind of led to the fact that I thought he was going to transform into what was missing because there had to be 2.
I could kind of see
I hadn't
that.
come to that point yet. That
The director's cut.
No, he watched the
the
theatrical cut.
version. Cause I did,
Oh, you did?
They never even talked about Gump having the horn.
Yeah,
No.
you don't see.
No, I
pick
just
up the
thought he
horn
was going to do the
at all.
transformation. He was making the sacrifice.
Well,
Right.
Becoming the
and
next unicorn.
Jesse, we don't see the unicorn horn replaced on the male unicorn in the director's cut.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they pick it up, and Gump says he has a promise to keep, but in the director's cut, you never see him actually place it upon the unicorn, and you don't see the unicorns in the ending times at all.
Because Jack turns and waves.
Yeah, when they come up on the
but you don't see how
wave,
the male unicorn came back
but,
at all.
Yeah, you don't see that whole length of
That seems like an odd thing to
equal
cut.
time.
It's kind of like to make
Yeah.
ending.
He also spends a lot more time in the water. He swims down and down and
in
down
the director's cut.
and down and down. It's almost as long as the first time.
Okay. Well, see, I thought the main movie had spaces they could cut. It kind of just sounds like they might have just cut what might have needed cutting.
There were some other scenes that got cut out from the theatrical movie that Shirley was talking about that I think were fine in the movie. I think it gave more character to Gump.
Content. Yeah.
Especially towards the beginning.
Really?
You want to tell them about that, Shirley, to explain that one a little more? That scene where Jack and Gump meet and the extra parts that are in as part of that.
Oh, the difference between the director's cut and the theatrical cut, or the theatrical version, is that when Gump comes to ask Jack, hey, what's going on? In the director's version, Gump actually puts a riddle to Jack and goes through all these theatrics of Jack having to guess this riddle. In the theatrical version, all of that is cut out, and it goes from, did nothing untoward happen, to Jack saying, yes, I took Lily to see the unicorns, and Gump, explodes, what? And then he says, well, I did it for love. And then at that point in time, he says, okay, all can be forgiven if you answer this riddle. Well, in the theatrical version, it goes to, oh, you did it for love, let's have some wine.
See, that makes a lot more sense. Even in the theatrical version, Jack just is baffled that Gump is willing to just roll with it.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a good touch. Gump was my favorite character in the movie. He really was.
Yeah.
He's what saved everything in my book. If they had more of him, it'd be better.
Johnny, how did you feel about Gump?
I thought his performance was probably the best one in the film. Like you said, he was 16 years old at the time, and
well, between 16 and 19,
right,
depending on the
16 and
length of the
19.
movie. Yeah, but yeah.
I mean, he and I forget the little pixie sprite girl. Luna.
Yeah.
They had the most emotion to show outside of Tim Curry in the entire film. And I don't know if I kind of assume Gump's voice was dubbed over.
It was.
Most of it.
By the person who played the fairy, Una.
The Luna dubbed Gump's voice?
Yes.
Well,
I think you're pulling our leg.
No, I read that somewhere.
It's in IMDb. Gump was played by somebody that was that had a deeper male voice, so they wanted it to sound more like a fairy. So they overdubbed the whole thing. Which, yes, it's overdubbed and you can tell, but it's actually pretty well done.
Yeah, I mean, between the emoting on screen and the emotion in the voice, like I didn't know which way they had done it, but he has a deep voice when he gets angry, like specifically that scene that got cut from the theatrical version, where he's threatening to kill Jack unless he answers the riddle. So I don't know. I really liked Gump, and I was impressed with his performance. Like I said, I was curious whether it was the actor or the voice actor that made it, but it sounds like it was a combination of the two things. So yeah, I totally could have seen a movie with just Gump and Tim Curry.
Yeah.
Battling it.
Battle it out.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, we've touched base on this a little bit, but let's talk a little overall what we thought about it, and not like give it final grades or anything, but just what we enjoyed and what we didn't enjoy. We'll start with
Jesse.
We'll start with Jesse. Jesse, is this your first time seeing the movie?
It is, and I've wanted to watch it for a long time. I thought it was the first time I've seen it. Apparently, it's the first time I've seen all of it. I remembered about half of it, and apparently I lost interest in it.
Today or
previously?
Today?
Because half of it seemed right up to where he burst out of the frozen water or whatever.
Okay.
I will admit, I prematurely stopped. But that being said, I was looking forward to it. I'm a huge Tim Curry fan. I've liked every movie he's been in. And it looks great, considering it's all practical effects.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't deserve the kind of flop that it was. I don't understand why it didn't do better. But it wasn't what everybody made it out to be, in my book. I think I went in with too high of expectations. It had good parts. It really did. The parts that I really liked. But it seems like it followed the aspects of the story I didn't like more than it followed the story I wanted to hear.
What story did you want to hear?
Gump and Darkness. And more Brown Tom and Screwball. I don't know.
So if they made a Legend 2, the story of Gump and his fairy friends, you'd be all in.
Yeah, it just seemed like it spent too much time on the long shots of them walking or swimming when they could have put more dialogue into it.
Well, that's Ridley Scott for you.
Yeah,
that is Ridley Scott, yeah. Johnny, is this your first time seeing this?
No, like Last Unicorn, I probably haven't actually watched it fully all the way through in over a decade, but it's a fantasy movie, so I've seen it several times before now. But like I said, this has been the first time in a very long time that I've sat down and watched the whole thing.
So what did you think? Or what did you think, I guess, before and now?
Before, I remembered it being just mediocre. I actually watched it with my wife. She was intrigued by the idea. She didn't know the movie existed, so she was intrigued by the idea of this movie existing with Tom Cruise and Tim Curry. She's a big Tim Curry fan as well. So when I had to go rent it, I actually had her go rent it for me. And she was like, "What is this? I've never heard of this." So we sat down and watched it together. And now, we did a little extra reading, because we were, quite frankly, a little bored during the movie. But I read some, reviews and opinions about the movie that made me reevaluate how I was watching it and what I was seeing. And what the reviewer proposed was that you're seeing, as Shirley said, a corruption of innocence in Princess Lily. So if you look at it, for me, if you look at it from the Princess Lily viewpoint, the movie gets a lot more dramatic because she's offered, everything she could possibly want, and all she has to do is give in and let this animal that she didn't even know existed before die. And it's a really it's a much darker, deeper story in that way. I think it's stretching a little bit, but it does add a new element, a new level to the story that I found kind of intriguing once it had been brought to my attention. Now the fact it had to be told to me, like, hey, look for this, like that's not good. The movies need to make it a little more obvious in their storytelling than this one did, but it was an interesting aspect to follow in the film.
Okay. Shirley, this isn't your first time watching it.
No, I own it.
Well, you actually own the theatrical and the director's
regular
cut.
version. I got a special pack.
Yeah. So, what did you think of it prior to today, and then did it change?
I forgot that we, like a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, we had tried to watch it, and then we didn't finish watching the theatrical version all the way through. But the director's cut. But the theatrical version, I guess, spoiled me in terms of the music that was played during it. Like you said, during the movie, it's real synthy and 80s, and it kind of dates the movie.
Well, and I wanted to say, because I don't think Johnny realizes this, there is a complete difference in music between the two.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have known.
So, Johnny, all the points where Mia Sara is singing, are those all cut out? Yes,
there's no song in the theatrical version. There's no Lily song in theatrical versions.
Really?
You never hear or see her singing at all.
Yeah, so that was something different, definitely for you. Yeah.
Yes.
And so all of the orchestral stuff too is replaced a lot with 80s synthy music.
80s,
I like
very dramatic, and I didn't realize it was so synthesizer. I didn't realize that was so prevalent until you pointed it out. And the music is very dramatic in the theatrical version, and it's not. There's not very much, if at all, maybe a couple spots or a couple shots during the theatrical version that there's any type of orchestral music.
Yeah.
And then in the theatrical version, Tangerine Dream at the end plays Loved by the Sun. And you don't get that at all. You don't get any of the type of music like from Brian Ferry and Tangerine Dream in the director's cut.
Yeah, so...
Which I felt... The song Tangerine Dream, Loved by the Sun, I felt that being played during the scenes at the end of the movie. I felt that made part of the movie because for me the movie was like this girl finds this part of her that is dark and it's materialistic, and this could, very well have been a political view during the 80s, but then she battles it, and in the end, she chooses the pure and the right part of herself.
Well, and so, Jesse, to give you an idea of what exactly Shirley's talking about, when he comes up out of the water and puts the ring on her finger at the end, and that synthy music starts, none of that in the director's cut.
Oh, really?
There's some orchestral stuff in the background, but it's not nearly as loud. It's kind of a background piece to just keep the back from being silent. But there is none of that synthy song that comes up. There's no singing, no nothing.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm a big music person, so the lyrics to "Loved by the Sun" matches what the movie entailed for me. Part of the lyrics are to believe in the good in man, which, they went through and they battled all this, and she could have given in and just taken it, but she didn't, and she gave in to, the right part of herself to end the movie in a quote-unquote fairy tale ending. But in the director's cut, when we were watching it, the orchestral music was so overwhelming at sometimes that it, just took me out of the movie altogether.
Yeah.
It just jarred me out of the movie, and I didn't enjoy the director's cut as much as I enjoyed the theatrical version.
To ask myself the same question, I've never watched this movie before. This was my first... Well, I've never watched the whole movie before.
Yeah.
I started it once in a previous relationship, and the person I was with decided prior to meeting Darkness, and by meeting Darkness I mean seeing his creepy hand talking to Blix, that it was too boring and we shut it off.
Really?
And then, yeah.
like, that's very intense. The theatrical version is very, very, very intense. And even this director's cut, her Blix walking up to the tree, the great tree, and going in to see darkness, I think that is a very intense theatrical moment.
Well, and to give you an idea, Johnny, that was when I was
dramatic.
That was prior to living with Doug, but we tried watching it at Doug's house. So, and then we tried to watch it a couple years ago, and I don't remember what happened. We got distracted by something else.
You fell asleep.
I
turned it off.
Probably. But
what you're saying is that you thought it was too dull also.
You know, honestly, I think I have a problem with falling asleep in movies when we're sitting at home and I'm comfy.
Yeah.
But I watched it today. I don't think it's the best fantasy movie out there, but I think there are some really good things in this that have been pulled from for other stories, or that are tropey without copying something else. I think the trope started here in a lot of ways. I also read that it's rumored to be the inspiration for Zelda, the Legend of Zelda, which
I was about to say, I can see a lot of.
Yeah, I can very much see that, and if it wasn't, that's fine, but if it is, I'm perfectly fine with that too, because it's a very similar story. So,
well, in one of the Zeldas, there is a fairy that follows you around basically as your guiding thing that says, hey, over here. And at one point, Una, in little fairy form, flies over and says, hey, over here, and I thought, that's it. That's where it came from.
Yeah.
So, Jesse, tell us about the theatrical ending. Tell us what you thought about the theatrical ending. Go into detail about how the movie ended, because I want Johnny's mind to be blown.
Well, the ending, the way it ended was, for starters, well, let me see.
You're really good at this.
I get my order mixed up, so I'm going to start at the end where Gump puts the horn on the unicorn. I guess you guys didn't get to see that? I don't understand why. Because, like I said,
that does seem kind of important.
Until that point, I thought Jack was sacrificing himself by jumping into the lake and turning into the unicorn. That being said, when I heard what you said, he just, Gump walks up, says something has to be done, and then you see the two unicorns right off. I kind of feel like that might have preluded to maybe Gump sacrifice himself to become the unicorn.
Oh, no, you see Gump and the rest of the fairy folk,
I'll say my wife did. She was still reading online about the movie. I think she had lost interest by that point. But and see, this is where I think I saw I know I saw it before, so I probably remembered the scene where Gump puts the horn back on the male unicorn. But like I knew, like he says, "Here, I'm going to take care of this. You go get the girl." Is basically how the director's cut goes. Like they defeat darkness, and he's like, "Here, I got this. You go get the girl." He says to Jack, and that's when, like, you don't see Gump again until they're waving goodbye to the camera or whatever.
Yeah, and I can see where Ridley Scott would think that might need to be cut, because it was kind of clumsily done when the rest of the practical effects in the movie was just absolutely stellar. The reattaching of the horn.
Yeah, Shirley's giving me a face, but I don't think she noticed that. It was way more clumsy than everything else they had done to that point, so I could see why that one kind of played out. Well, tell about the walkaway, Jesse. What happened there?
The walkaway?
Yeah, when everybody's leaving and going their separate ways.
Yeah, I don't remember there being a walkaway. Was there a walkaway?
So Jack and Lily walk off and wave goodbye.
Into the sunset?
I see the horses right off. The unicorns right off. I remember that, but I don't remember them waving.
Yeah, Jack and Lily turn and wave at Gump and the rest of the fairy folk and the two unicorns.
Yeah.
And they walk off into the sunset together. In the director's cut,
Jack goes
off into the sunset by himself, and Lily promises to come back tomorrow. Yeah.
Do what?
Lily promises to come back tomorrow. They aren't together after that. They're not happily ever after.
Why? That doesn't fit the story.
And it's very much implied, like when he puts the ring on her finger in the director's cut, when he puts the ring on her finger and kisses her and she wakes back up, she's like, oh, I had this terrible dream. And in the director's cut, they leave it at that. Like, there's this whole scene where, you know, he's going, oh, but it's over now, and you're safe, and blah, blah, blah. So she's not held accountable for her actions or what she should have learned through the whole time that everything happened. But in the theatrical version, you know, he wakes up, she's smiling, and the way the lines are, it's like she knows, you know, they're together, they're walking away, and they defeated this darkness that could have consumed mankind.
And also, in the director's cut, he kisses her and says, "I love you, Lily," before she wakes up.
Oh, really?
Unlike
in the theatrical
version, he kisses her, she wakes up, and he says, "I love you, Lily," and she says, "I love you too." And there's a connection immediately made, whereas in the director's cut, it's not that connection isn't all the way there.
Yeah, I think in the director's cut, it felt like he was going, okay, now we have to come back to reality. This can't be fantastical anymore. She's a princess. She's going to go back to her palace where she's going to be. Jack is a child of the woods, so he's going to go off and do his thing, and she's going to come back tomorrow.
I completely agree. That's exactly how I read that too, Shirley. That because in the beginning of the movie, she throws her ring away and says, "Whoever brings this to me, I will marry him." And then in the director's cut, she takes the ring back off and puts it on his finger, and it's sort of like, "All right, we'll talk later. You know, we're cool though." But see, I got sort of like you were saying, she grew up. In this whole story, and she had promised to marry this wild child of the forest, and afterwards, like, she had this epiphany, like, oh wait, I need to do the right thing for me, you know. Something that I wanted to say earlier, but we got sidetracked. This movie she's not just the damsel in distress. Like, she is a damsel in distress at points, but she also
starts as one big time, because I thought it was going to go down that trope hard.
Oh, yeah, she definitely starts as one, but then she fights the bad guy as well, and you know...
And shows cunning.
And cunning and strength, and emotional and physical strength, and, you know, so... She was almost as much of a hero in this as Jack was, you know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
She probably couldn't have gotten away if it hadn't been for Jack, but she still fought despite Jack being there.
Does anybody know what rating this movie got?
PG-13.
Okay, because I was wondering, at the start, I thought their relationship was a lot closer than apparently it was.
Well,
because they start off kissing and stuff, and then it kind of fades to dark. It expresses time has passed, and it's like they're getting up again. I thought that was alluding to something.
Yeah, it does. That in the theatrical version, it very much alludes to their being intimate during that time.
Oh, okay. So while we've been sitting here, I've been thinking about this.
But the thing is, in the director's cut, you don't see any of that. That scene never happens.
I have a feeling that there are two different story versions here.
Yeah.
I think the director's cut is a story about Jack, from Jack's perspective, and it's all about Jack. And I don't mean that in a bad way. But there's he gets a band of friends with him to go save Princess Lily, and in the end, he's the only one that fixes things, and he goes off by himself because you don't see what's his name? You don't see Gump put the horn back on. So it's all about Jack. Jack is the central character, and Jack is the only character that matters. Everybody else is just a sidekick. Whereas in the theatrical version, it sounds like Jack and all of these other people have an adventure. These things happened, and they all grow as characters, and they all have a part in it. Instead of just, it's Jack, and then these people, it's Jack and these people that are part of the story. Yeah. And I think that them ending up together solidifies that for me, and this is just my version. In my head, I like this story better.
Which sounds weird.
Go ahead.
Which sounds weird, because when you say, like, the studio cut / theatrical cut versus director's cut, usually the studio wants the happy love story.
Oh yeah.
But so in your opinion, the happy love story but the all-inclusive story go hand in hand in the theatrical version, the studio version, and the director takes the story in a very
different direction.
Yeah, very singular hero.
Yeah. And I'm not against either version of those stories. I do like the ending of the theatrical version better because everybody gets a part and everybody gets a say. Mm-hmm. And then Jack in his, like, he's like, bye guys, I'll see you later. But it's not like, I'll never see you again, unicorns and fairy folk. It's like, hey guys, I'll see you later. I'm going to go hang out with my girlfriend now. Like, that's the way I felt. Like, they were together and he had friends in the forest and they all could get back together again. Whereas at the end of the director's cut, I felt like he was saying goodbye, like he was leaving.
Yeah, like it was finalized.
Yeah,
like, you know, because he says in both of them, "I'll miss you." Mm-hmm. You know, at that part where they're going their separate ways, but very much it comes back to the theme in the studio theatrical version. You feel like, oh, they're going to see each other again sometime.
Yeah, I just thought he was moving into the city, going to be visiting the forest, not living in the forest.
Yeah.
And see, my reading on that with all my extra reading was that, Jack had grown up as well. And yeah, he was still living in the woods, but the fairy folk, typical fantasy, the fairies don't interact with adults. Like, they only interact with children. So he had grown up by defeating darkness. He had achieved manhood, thus he had to leave behind the fairies. And at the same time, Princess Lily had grown up, and their whole world was different. So they had to both take time. Everyone had to take time apart to reevaluate what was going to happen for them.
Right.
And
so I guess. Oh, go ahead.
I was saying, then Jack Jack had the ring that he could once again bring back to Lily. Find her again and win her over in in time, if that's what they both wanted. So the more ambiguous ending in the director's cut, I don't know. I haven't. It's been so long since I've seen the theatrical version. I can't really say which I like better, but I found the director's cut very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, overall, we've talked about this.
Talk about makeup and setting.
Oh yeah. We actually should. I would like to start with Tim Curry because I think he was. Other than I think those horns are ridiculous and I don't like how big they are. I don't like how big they are at the base.
He wore them well though. I mean,
he did.
It looked realistic-ish.
They had to have made out of like paper because that would have been heavy as crap. Yeah. No, I mean like paper, like not even mache. Mache makes it heavy. Paper, just plain paper.
Yeah, I'm not, like I feel like I read something about his costuming somewhere about his horns, because I'm sure I looked it up at some times, but I can't remember at all.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Johnny got bored and did research.
Yeah, what I read, and again, I'm not swearing that this is the absolute truth, was that for the close-ups, they did heavier prosthetics, but then they set up a rigging to suspend them a little bit from above Tim Curry's head.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So that they could be more real and look heavy on his head, but not kill his neck. But there is a scene towards the end where he's gloating and relishing in the sacrifice that's about to happen and the fight with Jack, where they get a little looser. And I actually was watching for this, and there were a few scenes where he tosses his head back and they wobble on his head. So they had two different kind of prosthetics for depending on the shot they were going to make that day, is what I read.
Okay.
Again, it was a fan site. It was, so there was no, I was the makeup guy. I can swear and validate and so on. This was just what the internet was telling me. So.
Okay. Well, and I do like how Tim Curry is only 5'9".
Oh yeah.
But they make him look 7 foot tall easily.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I guess if you add those horns in, like 12 foot tall.
Yeah.
Black horns.
But like
black horns.
Yeah. Yeah. But like they did a really good job of making Sara look tiny compared to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there were hand prosthetics and probably some leg prosthetics as well. But even beyond that. Yeah, but I mean, like, just
muscle.
to make him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When he is leaning down over her to wake her up after she faints, Like, you can see, like, the musculature on his legs and his arms and everything. When you see Tim Curry in, like, Rocky Horror Picture Show or Clue, he's, like, so, not rail thin, but
he's not a thick guy.
He's not like that.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to say it correctly.
That was all fake. There was Tim Curry's eyes and mouth were about the only thing real in any of those shots. Everything else was fake. Well,
except for, like, his teeth and his mouth. I mean, even his mouth, like, those teeth were awesome.
Yeah, we were talking about the prosthetics and the makeup, and I was just like, and I usually don't tear movies apart because I go in for the story and the emotion. That's what I want to see and that's what I want to hear. And I was like, he's going to open his mouth really wide and laugh, and I'm going to look for that second row of teeth this time. I'm doing it. And there wasn't, like, you couldn't tell that there was anything there.
They only a couple of times, there were a couple of times his chin wobbled a little bit, but it was huge.
I didn't see his chin wobble.
He had this giant, almost butt chin. I mean, he had a huge butt chin.
Have any of you guys just watched the, what I think it's called Movie 43?
No.
Okay, never mind. There's a scene in it that I could not get out of my mind with that, but it's not necessarily appropriate for this podcast.
But yeah, no, I think Tim Curry's makeup was
phenomenal.
Oh, absolutely.
I think all the rest of the prosthetics for everybody were really good.
Then they were called gnomes, right? He did call them gnomes at one time.
They weren't called anything, I don't think.
I thought somebody. Okay,
I think Gump was called an elf at one time, but
yeah.
They use several words to describe fawn, elf. I think gnome, sprite, fairy. Like I said, there was just it seemed like the distinction was you were either a good guy or a bad guy, and so if you were a bad guy, you had a negative connotation monster, and if you're a good guy, you had a positive connotation monster name, and it didn't matter what anybody was at a time. It just you were that. So
not to get off track, but I'm going to get off track a little bit. Talking about the different kinds of names and things, that's one thing I really liked about this was the fact that everything had a name. Both unicorns were named. The swamp troll was named. All the dwarves. Everything in that movie had a backstory.
Yeah, everything had a backstory, and, like, even the swamp troll had a last name that you don't learn you don't necessarily hear, but it's Meg Mucklebones, which I think Mucklebones is a great. And the troll, speaking of the troll, the female troll is played by Robert Picardo, who is very much not a female. Best known for his work on Star Trek Voyager as the Doctor.
Yeah. And Jesse, if you liked Meg Mucklebone, I suggest you watch the director's cut because there is a lot of that scene that is cut out.
Oh, is there?
It goes from what part?
She pops up out of the water.
She pops up out of the water. She says, "I'm going to eat you," and she like rears back and laughs that very first time, and that's when Tom cuts off her head. In the director's cut. Yeah. In the director's cut, she rears back and laughs, and he starts giving her compliments, saying that she's one of the most beautiful angels he's ever seen, and she needs to gaze upon her reflection in his shield. And that scene goes on for a good, 5 to 7 minutes?
I wouldn't say 7 minutes, but it was 5. A solid 5
minutes before, because at that time, he didn't know how to use his sword or anything, so he's like biding time to try to get his sword out of the sheath and try to get a handle on it. And then there's one time where he has the sword out and she's gazing at herself in the shield, and he almost drops it in the water clumsily before he actually gets it up. And she decides, okay, I'm going to eat you now.
See, that makes more sense, because this was Jack's first kill, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought he went rather cold-hearted real quick, because all she does is I want to eat you, and then poof, off with her head.
Yeah. I think the theatrical version should have embraced that scene, because I feel that shows a growth in his character, but also shows, how cunning Jack can be. He's like, he learned to be, okay, this is a dire moment and I have to lie. And the pure of heart, when you're the pure of heart, you don't lie. You know, there's nothing that you lie about. Lies are not, and cunning aren't known to you. So I think this scene for Jack is similar to the scene with Darkness and Lily, where she's lying to him.
Yeah.
So.
Any thoughts, John?
No, I think Shirley got it. Like, you know, that pretty much covers it. Yeah.
And I will say everything that was in this, even though there were the two dwarfy looking guys that were similar, they still had very different personalities. They had different looks to them.
Oh yeah.
Nothing in here was generic. Like, there wasn't just, oh, that's a generic background weird thing. Like, let's move on.
Yeah, no. Like I said, my attention wasn't riveted, and I still know Brown Tom and Screwball and Gump and.
Yeah. What did you guys think about the settings? Because
that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, so my question is, between the settings and the makeup, is any of this cutting edge for the 80s? I mean, have we seen, like, when Blix first comes into the scene and you see it with Darkness, you know, you never see Darkness because he's sitting in that chair, but she comes into the room. I keep saying it's a her. It comes into the room and it's lit by the fire. I mean, that makeup on that person's face is just kind of, it's like extensive and detailed and amazing.
It is, and I don't think they did anything new, but they did everything incredibly well.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the Roger Ebert review of the movie, he praised the makeups and special effects, saying that no matter how good it is, because you can't save a lackluster movie, basically, was the gist of his review. So yeah, I was looking it up and I just closed the page and forgot to make a note. It wasn't Jim Henson Company, it was somebody else. So I don't think it was anything groundbreaking, but they were masters of their craft, the people who worked on this movie, undoubtedly.
And this movie took $30 million to produce.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it netted $15 million total.
Which is ridiculous.
In the theaters. Like, I agree, Jesse. I don't think this is the greatest thing ever. But I think it deserves way more than that. I think this is worthy of being a classic fantasy movie, and I think for a lot of people it is.
Yeah.
For a fantasy movie,
I think there was definitely a niche group of people that grabbed a hold of it when it came out and was like, okay, this is good.
Yeah. Johnny, do you agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I think this movie is one of those classic victims of poor advertising and marketing. It ran into... I had missed the details about the 3-year delay. I did not know about that. So, I mean, given the year after this, Tom Cruise went on to Top Gun. Sara was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And, you know, Tim Curry's Tim Curry. You know, they they were... Something went wrong here. This movie didn't get recognized, but being that I was 3 or 4 when the movie came out, I wouldn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So much,
well, and it could have fallen under the Dungeons and Dragons issue, because 86 is around the time that Mazes and Monsters came out. Is that right, Jesse?
Yeah, around about.
Because you're the lover of Mazes and Monsters, right?
So anything fantastical like that would have been like,
it was brushed off as a kids movie with not a lot of content to it, but then the action, there's no action to speak. I mean, there's not much action to speak of in this movie. There's no, real kids stuff in this movie. It's got a lot of think pieces going on.
Yeah.
Mazes and Monsters came out in 1982.
Yeah.
Okay. So so this movie would have been started when that was coming out. So by the time it came out,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut in. I'm sorry.
No, Jesse, go ahead.
It might have also just been a release date time. I was looking at the movies released around that time. This came out on April 18th. May 9th was Short Circuit.
Oh.
One of the greatest movies of 1986.
May 16th was Top Gun.
The
same
yeah.
year. Thunder Run came out.
So you're looking at a, American hero, and everybody was looking to space in the 80s, and we've got to get out into outer space and all the robotics and stuff like that against, something that could have been looked at as fantastical.
The month before that, Highlander
kids movie.
Yeah. The month before that, Highlander came out.
Oh,
God.
Maybe it was just a bad release time, and it was billed as a kids movie when it should have been a little more thinking adult movie because it was slower.
Definitely.
I mean, Matt, you listen to Zach on Film still, correct?
Sort of. On and off.
Okay, well, they talk on that podcast. So we are, of course, the uneducated. Like, we don't know anything more about film than what we've gleaned from listening to professionals talk about film. Zach on Film is a podcast hosted by a film student and a professor who was teaching film and television, and 2 other film and television degree holders. So, they know what they're talking about. And according to them, February, March, April is the dead zone.
Yeah.
If you release your movie then, you're intentionally killing it. And then, modern times probably don't hold those, because we hold that same impact now, because we had 50 Shades of Grey released this year.
Well, and I think even nowadays, February and March, not so much April now, but February and March are dead zones for your action movies. They're for slower, talky movies. Like Jupiter Ascending got moved from the summer into February because they didn't expect it to do well. Same thing with G.I. Joe the year before. Right.
But a G.I. Joe was an action movie.
That's true.
So
they put those in there.
Which I did see, and it's not bad, but it's not great. So anyway, So but back in the 80s, they moved this movie and put it in a dead zone and got exactly what they expected out of it. Unfortunately. So.
Well, we're getting along towards an hour. I'm glad because I wasn't sure we were going to be able to hit that whole hour. Let's go ahead and give it a.
Still haven't talked about setting, but that's all right.
Let's talk about the setting. Go ahead.
Well, it's the same as the makeup. For me, it's the same as the makeup. I keep like the introductory thing or the introductory scene where they're just kind of a little bit of music is playing and they're going through. And there's the bear trying to get the honey, and I was just thinking that this movie has most of the best sets that I've seen. I mean, you can tell that they're sets. You can tell that some of it's not real.
Well, and they use the sets to tell story because at the beginning when Jack and Lily are around, you're seeing all this pollen in the air and it's clean and clear. And then once they get to the tree where the darkness lives, or darkness, not the darkness, just darkness.
Yeah.
It's dark and dingy and wrong.
And
bad.
Dead. Everything's dead. There's nothing living and light around it. So the use of sets for storytelling is amazing. But I think the music in the theatrical version, the studio version, was better.
Yeah, I did like that they had
helped to tell the story better.
I did like that they had the one trained bird. Just that one.
Oh,
the black bird with the yellow beak.
Yeah.
Like we've got, okay guys, we can only afford one of these. We're gonna make it land on Tom Cruise a couple of times. So that's all he's gonna do. But we got this one bird. We got to use it. All right. So now that we talked about I did like the setting pieces.
Yeah, they were beautiful, beautiful shots composed with the setting. So.
And I will warn any listener that be prepared for a dark movie, not as in like theme, but like there's not a lot of brightness in the way it's shot.
Lights off. Like watch it at night with the lights off.
Yeah,
that might have been the other
20 minutes, half hour. It's in the dark after that.
Yeah. So we'll start with Johnny. Why don't you give us a star rating and who you might suggest see this?
Oh well, that I give this a let's say a 2.75. It's not a horrible movie. It's average. It's a little long, a little slow. If you're, but as far as who I can recommend seeing it, you got to be a hardcore fantasy fan. We talk about on our shows the Wheel of Time series of books, which got a pilot for a television series.
We watched it.
Did you?
We watched it.
Yeah. I can't bring myself to do it yet.
Don't do it. No.
No, I gotta.
Don't.
You don't.
Well,
Johnny, of all the things I've ever told you not to watch.
The thing is, if you like the prelude to Dragon Reborn, it's just the prelude. That's all it is. It's where I can't remember the bad guy's name.
It's where Luz Theron talks to
Who's
the other
bad
guy.
Guy's name?
Shaitan.
No.
Shaitan.
Shaitan is the overall arcing bad guy.
That's all it is.
It's exactly that scene.
But it's also badly written, badly directed, badly acted, bad scenes, bad dressings. It's just please don't.
They didn't have enough money, but the thing is, it's like, oh my gosh, these are the lines from the book. Like this is what I saw in my head when I read this part. That's what I thought.
We could have shot a better movie in the basement of my parents' house with a handheld camcorder.
No.
We would have had a bigger budget.
Well, I don't know about that. Billy Zane was starring in this.
Yeah, and he produced it, and he did something else too.
Which means they went, "Hey, we're not going to give you any money, but we're going to put your name a bunch of places so that if we make money, you get it."
I think he got wind of this, and he likes the series or read the series, and he's like, "Hey, you know what? We're going to back this."
Anyway, so Johnny, you were saying about rating the movie we're actually talking about.
Yeah. 2.75 just to push it onto the positive side of the 5-star rating. It is better than mediocre. It's a Ridley Scott film. If you watched, my mind just went blank.
Dungeons and Dragons?
No, the movie with Orlando Bloom, set in the Crusades.
Kingdom of Heaven.
Yeah,
Kingdom of Heaven. If you have any positive opinion about that movie, this one's worth checking out because it's an early Ridley Scott. You can see where he's coming from and where
Yeah. And there's some of that same pacing issues there too.
There are, but again, it's not horrible. And remember that it's about like the lives of two people. Like there's a lot of characters, but it's all about these two characters going through that crucible that so few of us actually get that moment where it's like we're children on one side and we're adults on the other, and that's what he was trying to illustrate with this movie. So it's I think it's worth checking out if you're really into fantasy. If you're really into Ridley Scott, it's worth checking out. If you're not, then go watch Labyrinth.
Jesse.
Well, I thought I'd give it the lowest. I'm going to say that right now, which I'm not, apparently. I'd give it 3 out of 5 stars. It's above average. I didn't necessarily enjoy all the directing views. I wished there had been a little bit more story to it, a little more focus on the characters. But
watch the director's cut.
See, I think my version had more on the characters, though, from the way you guys were talking. Cause
in some ways, yes. In a lot of in some ways, yes. In a lot of ways, no.
I want to see the uncut version. Because apparently it's even longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah. I don't think I can make it. But it's got so much backstory. It's there. I enjoyed watching it once. I'll never watch it again. That doesn't necessarily make it a bad movie, though. And I would highly suggest it to anybody who really enjoys finding Easter eggs in current stuff, like movies and video games. Like we mentioned, the fairy from there is the fairy from Zelda, most of the time at least. Navi was the name of the fairy I was trying to think of earlier.
Yeah.
And it is an exact port over from Una. There's a lot from World of Warcraft in it. There's a lot from current movies. But, yeah, just be ready to be a little bored.
Shirley, what'd you think?
I own it, and it's funny that John kind of made that distinction or comparison. Because I own Legend and I own Kingdom of Heaven, and I love both of them. But he said, or go watch Labyrinth, which I think Labyrinth is an okay movie.
Oh, really?
So I'm on the Kingdom of Heaven Legend side.
Yeah.
So I would give it a 3.75. Let's go there.
Oh,
so.
I am. I'm going to give it a 2.5. Actually, no. You know what? I'm going to give it a 2. And I'm going to give it a 2 because I realize very much that if Tim Curry and the kid that played Gump were not in it, it would easily be a 1 for me.
Oh yeah.
I think that the two of them bring it up to a 2, and then everybody else. I'm not even saying anybody was bad. It's just there was a lot of mediocre, in it. The pacing is not great. And maybe it's because I watched the director cut.
I think if you watch the theatrical version, it'll be different for you.
I don't like Jack walking away on his own at the end of the director's cut. It breaks my heart a little bit, which travels back to where he says, "I don't want to kiss you" in the director's cut. Mia says, Princess Lily says, "Don't you want to kiss me, Jack?" He says, "I'm afraid you'll break my heart." And she says, "Oh, don't worry about that." But then she does.
Yeah.
And that broke my heart a little bit while I watched it. So I don't know. It's just not. It's got to be a 2 for me. And I have to agree with Johnny. If you like Ridley Scott and you like his slow, sweeping style, then this might be better for you. And even if you're not the biggest fan of fantasy and you still like Ridley Scott, this is probably a good place to go. If you love Tim Curry, though, he is phenomenal in this.
But watch the theatrical version.
Yes. And I will call back to there's a quote in the movie was Beauty that Slain the Beast. This movie even calls back to other older movies. That comes from King Kong in 1933. This movie is aware of what it is. I will say that. It also is aware of the world it was made in, so it calls into that in a couple of places in very positive ways. If you are a role-playing gamer and you love fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons kind of stuff, this is something worth watching, not necessarily for the story.
Even Changeling.
Yeah, especially Changeling. Not even just for the story, but for the characters that are in it and seeing how you can take a bunch of weird fairy things and make them important and grow on that. And there's a lot of setting stuff here that's really, really good. And I think that is a key demographic that would enjoy this movie as well.
Yeah,
so this is the first of 4 movies that we'll be watching to thank our backers. We have Watership Down. Thanks, Jesse.
Am I going to need tissues?
Yes.
Maybe.
We will be also watching The Room, which...
Thanks to George.
Thanks, George. That one will be coming eventually.
Is that as bad as Dillinger is Dead?
No, because it'll be weird and bad.
Oh.
Instead of kind of weird and bad. Like, really weird.
Not
really
the creepy neighbor next door kind of weird. The
more
more friendly weird.
Yeah, and then the other movie we'll be watching is called Amazon Women on the Moon, which, as I understand it, is kind of a self-referential comedy parody piece.
It is a great movie.
Along the lines of what I would think Spaceballs would be looked at like, kind of, or UHF. You've never seen UHF?
No.
Oh, you haven't seen UHF?
Oh.
There's a VHF.
No, UHF. It's Weird Al's only movie.
Yeah.
Oh.
He's a good actor. I don't know
might
why
even
it's
be
on
on
movie.
Netflix.
That's probably why I haven't watched it.
Honestly, it is really good. It's got Michael Richards, who played Kramer in it. He's phenomenal.
You guys are losing me.
Anyway, so we have those 3 movies coming up, and we'll be hitting some movies in March. Starting in March, we're going to start doing immediate movie reviews again. Our next Criterion Collection will be Hidden Fortress, and that'll be coming out for the next couple of months. And we'll be doing some great stuff. Don't forget, we just launched a new podcast called Go Fund This. You can find that on iTunes by searching for Go Fund This. Shortly, it will be it will cease being in the feed for the Nerds Domain podcast, so you'll need to go check those out on its own feed. And then keep an eye out for Gaming with Scott. That'll be coming out soon, very, very soon too. So that'll do us tonight. You can find us on Facebook and on Twitter. You can head over to iTunes and give us a rating. 5 stars is great, but even if you just tell us what you think, that's really helpful, and we can read those on the air and be really happy we got those. You can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/nerdsdomain, and you can head over /loot and find our shirts there. And we will talk to you guys real soon.